Excuse me. Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldandblack.com, live in Williams Arena. You may know it as the Barn. Here following Purdue's 81-61 win at Minnesota. As Purdue resumes Big Ten play, this is your goldandblack.com wrap video brought to you by our friends, as always, at the Purdue Club Hotel. Thank you to them so much for your support. I did not find the location at the Mall of America yet, but I'm going to dig around tomorrow before my flight. This was probably a wide range of emotions for Purdue partisans, which is my way of saying fans. I just like to use bigger words than necessary quite often, because the first half of this game, wasn't Purdue's finest hour. This is not a very good Minnesota team. I do think you have to give Minnesota some credit for hanging around like gum on the bottom of Purdue's shoe there in the first half. But I do think Purdue missed some opportunities to really open this game up. That said, they had a lead of, 7 points or something like that in the first half. But were never able to kind of distance themselves from a team that has some real offensive limitations in Minnesota. And, Purdue gets beat on 2 inbound plays. They get the ball inside a few times to open the game and don't come away with anything. That's kind of basketball. But it was an opportunity for Purdue to really start this game well. They didn't shoot the ball very well in the first half. That's basketball too. That's Big Ten basketball on the road. But it left Purdue in this position where you're only up 1 at halftime, and Minnesota's positioned to ultimately take a lead with less than 16 minutes to play. And you're sitting here wondering, does this team have that same winning edge to it? Do they have that ability to just figure it out on the fly and just take this game over? Because they had opportunities and they didn't capitalize on them. But sure enough, just like that, as soon as Minnesota goes up 1, again, under 16 to play, I can't remember what the exact time was. Not that it matters. Under 16 should cover it. Purdue just dominated. Part of that, I thought, was just them playing with energy, that them playing with a real competitive edge, the term I use way too much, but also just making shots. I think that, Braden Smith showed his gamer instincts there in the final 10 minutes of this game, making 4 of his, I believe he made 4 of his 5 threes there in the final 10 minutes. All of his threes were important. The first one came when Purdue was kind of middling offensively. And he shot a long 3 and made it at the end of the shot clock when Purdue badly needed something. And so he really rose to the occasion in this game. 10 assists, no turnovers is the stat of the game. That is the guy with the ball in his hands the most in context. That category is how Purdue gets beat. This Minnesota team is not the style of team that has given Purdue problems by any means. Those are high-pressure, athletic, long and active teams with defensive cultures in their programs. That's who Purdue has lost to. Nevertheless, turnovers of any kind, whether they're forced, whether they're just unforced errors, whatever it may be, are Purdue's path to defeat this season. That has been proven time and again this season and for the last several years. And for Braden Smith to come out here, shake off what was a pretty iffy shooting first half and finish with 10 assists and no turnovers on top of all those game-sealing shots he made at the end, just really, really spoke to the level of competitor and the level of player he is and the comfort Purdue has to have with him having the ball in his hands in these important games. This was, I wrote before the game, there are must-wins and there are can't-loses. I think there's modest difference that I'm not sure I can even articulate. But I thought this was a can't-lose game for Purdue because Minnesota obviously is not the best team in the Big Ten. It's probably the worst team in the Big Ten. I feel bad for Ben Johnson. He had a really good team being built last season that got decimated by the modern realities of program building in this recent era of college sports and college basketball in particular. But this is a very limited team, a very, very limited team. And I thought Purdue did a good job defensively running them off the three-point line, making them take tough twos. But I also think this team's a little bit ragged around the edges and likes to take long twos. And that's not the best way to win basketball games. But Mike Mitchell, their second leading scorer and one of their two formidable scorers, goes 2 for 10, 0 for 6 from 3. Took a lot of bad shots, a lot of wild shots. I'd give Purdue a little bit of credit for that too, but I think he got a little carried away at times. Really hurt them. And then Purdue catches a break in that Dawson Garcia, who's the new Boo Booey in the Big Ten, who he will never leave. He's just a permanent fixture in the Big Ten. Goes 2 of 7 at the foul line, which I believe he was in the mid-80s at the foul line coming in, if not 90. But that's simple luck. You don't defend free throws. But I thought that Purdue, got the rebounds it needed to get, got the stops it needed to get there to finally in the second half be able to break this game open. I thought Braden Smith was enough of a threat that, like a lot of these teams, they really wanted to be aggressive with him on ball screens. They really came at him. They really stepped out to try to cut him off. And, he started burning it there at the end. And he ends up with those 10 assists. The middle pick and roll, I thought, with Trakoff and Wren, really, really opened up there in the second half and got Purdue in an offensive rhythm. And sometimes when that sort of thing happens, it manifests itself in other ways too. The threes start going. When people start feeling good about themselves, I think momentum in sports is real. I thought Purdue got some momentum with that two-man game with Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Wren. And then obviously Fletcher Lawyer was brilliant in this game. Again, Purdue, the path to defeat for Purdue is turnovers. That has been proven time and again. Your two veteran guards come out here in their second road game in the Big Ten this year and commit 0 turnovers between them in damn near playing the whole game, combining to play the whole game. Braden Smith played all but, 36 seconds. My math isn't great. And Fletcher Lawyer played all but 157. And those guys committed no turnovers between them. And Fletcher Lawyer didn't miss a shot until the last few minutes of the game. Really, really did some really good things offensively, giving Minnesota a lot of problems coming off those dribble handoffs and those dribble catches. Not a dribble catch. How do you catch a dribble? My terminology's messed up right now. So you saw the game. Catching the ball off those screens at the top of the key and then being able to turn the corner, and if the guy bails, pull up and hit that little jumper or turn the corner on him and make that runner. He made all the right reads. Braden Smith made all the right reads. Just a really, really big-time game from Purdue's experienced backcourt. Their two best players, two of their three best players, I guess I should say, and the guys you lean on in situations like this, not just being on the road, but being in a situation where, you're trailing with 16 minutes to go. Nobody will say this, but against a team you should beat. And this went from a game where Purdue, looked vulnerable to a game where Purdue wins by 20. And I think Lawyer and Braden Smith's veteran presences and leadership really showed up in those moments. I think, Trey Kaufman-Wren could have started the game a little bit better, but him, finishing 17 points on another 8 of 14, really got going in his short roll game, long roll game too, a little bit. One turnover from him. It was like a minute into the game, I think. The pass he made to Jakari Harris for that 3 in the first half was a really significant play, because that's the play that Purdue needs to make. It's when Braden Smith's got to make the first read in those ball screens. And then when the defense is loading up to stop Trey Kaufman-Wren on his slip, that guy that they're leaving in the lane steps out to that, takes away his role. He's got to be able to make that next pass. And him throwing that ball out to Jakari Harris was the play. And that's the shot that Purdue needs to make, whether it's Miles Colvin, whether it's Cam Heide, whether in this case it's Jakari Harris, maybe it's C.J. Cox. That's the shot they got to make, because they got to expose that one-man zone sitting there in the lane waiting to either jump out to Kaufman-Wren or clog the lane so he can't roll all the way to the basket, or to double Kaufman-Wren from the backside when the ball goes in the post. That's the guy Purdue's got to attack. And that pass Kaufman-Wren made was the perfect example of what I'm talking about. So Caleb Furst, obviously, I have to talk about him. He was really, really good. He earned a start based on his play against Toledo. I was surprised Matt Painter switched his starting five as quickly as he did. He normally does that after losses, if he's going to do it at all. But I know they wanted more from Camden Heide and Miles Colvin here after the last couple of games. Furst played well against Toledo. He's played hard. He always does. He's done the right things. And, C.J. Cox gets in the starting lineup too. But I thought this was as much about wanting to push Heide and Miles Colvin to get more out of them than it was about rewarding Furst and Cox. But Furst certainly was up to it in this game. He certainly looked like a guy who deserved, what you might call the promotion. He was really, really good, and he was a huge part of this win. Not just his stats, the 11 points and the 6 rebounds. Made 5 of 6 free throws. That's big time. His energy, his physicality were big deals. Minnesota there for a while really went after Purdue in the post. Tell me you've heard that before. You haven't, because nobody has. But this is a different Purdue team, and this is a different season. And Purdue is not huge around the basket anymore. And when Trey Kaufman-Wren's playing with 3 fouls in the second half, Minnesota went after him because they know, like what I'm about to say, is that Purdue needs Trey Kaufman-Wren on the floor. Things change for them offensively so much without him out there. They need him on the floor. They need him to stay out of foul trouble. But Minnesota went after him with bigger guys, but also simply because of the fouls. They wanted to get him out of the game. And again, it's kind of a flip script here, where Purdue is always the team attacking people in the post, and now it's kind of the other way around. And what Purdue could really stand to do is get more pressure on the ball on the perimeter and make those entries more difficult and protect those guys. I think they're doing a pretty good job with their post doubles. They're doing it differently this year, and I think it's been pretty effective. But they got to keep Trey Kaufman-Wren out of foul trouble. And Caleb Furst starting the game and defending Dawson Garcia and doing a pretty good job. I think that was probably part of the decision process there in terms of starting Caleb Furst as well. Furst did a good job on Dawson Garcia. He got his numbers, 20 points. A lot of that came at the end. He could have had a lot more. Again, 2 of 7 at the foul line. That's very unlike him. Simple luck for Purdue. But Purdue will be happy to be done with Dawson Garcia finally, provided he doesn't have like a measles year or something. God knows with the NCAA anymore. But he's been around forever. This is the second team that Purdue's faced him against or with of his 3 teams. They missed him at Marquette, even though they did play Marquette like every year for a while there. They missed him at Marquette, but they got him against North Carolina, and now they've gotten him a couple times against Minnesota. And he had 24 against him in Mackey Arena, I believe, last year. Gets 20 today. Easily could have had 25. So I don't know what I'm really working toward here. My last thing I wrote down here was Trey Kaufman-Wren was excellent in this game again, but they need him on the floor. They have to get him on. They have to keep him on the floor. He can't play 40 minutes. He's not going to play 40 minutes. But there are stretches where you just need him out there. And, the foul issue is something that, Painter seems to be trying to get in front of at times. And that's probably not ideal. That's the way one of Purdue's foundational players has to be handled. But when he picks up that first foul now, you can't let him get that second one. He's just too important. He's too important to you offensively. He's too important to you on the glass, even though he's not a dominant rebounder by any stretch of the imagination. But he's the best he got. And, as I wrote in my column the other day, this is completely unrelated to anything. But I think, the Daniel Jacobson thing is showing up a little bit here. I think, Purdue's been vulnerable against the dribble, and just having a big, tall guy standing around the rim might help as a deterrent against people who are trying to attack Purdue off the dribble, break them down, get them scrambling in rotations, things like that. He'd be good for 2 blocks a game, probably. He'd be good for 6 points a game, 4 rebounds, just off of garbage, just off of fouls, putbacks, drop-off passes, whatever it might be. He'd get a couple of rebounds a game that he could reach that nobody else could. He's not ready physically. He wasn't ready physically. Obviously, now he's a broken leg, so he's definitely not ready physically. But he wouldn't have been ready physically. But 7'4" is 7'4", and I think that you're starting to see where he could have helped this Purdue team right away, right now, at least. His lack of physical readiness maybe could have been offset a little bit with experience as you got deeper into the season, but what's done is done. Obviously, he's out for the year. Him returning to full strength, presumably, and him, in the best case scenario, being bigger and stronger to open next season, in conjunction with a presumably improved Raleigh Burgess, should really help Purdue next season. But this isn't next season. This is now. And, Purdue's, again, trying to win a Big Ten championship and get a good seed to the NCAA tournament. And this was a game it couldn't lose in both of those contexts. And, again, in the second half, when Purdue needed to bring its best, it brought it's best. So that's what I got here from Purdue's 81-61 win at Minnesota. It's been a kind of a weird week to be talking about sports and stuff. The thing in New Orleans was really, really sad and unfortunate, and all that stuff. And just wanted to mention that. Our thoughts go out to all those people. I know that my small voice is irrelevant, but it bears mentioning. Thoughts to Jaden Ivey as well. Not nearly the same severity of what happened in New Orleans, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm conflating those two things, but really, really tough deal for Jaden Ivey with the injury he suffered the other day. Tough on him, but also in the big picture, his career, this is his contract window. This is when, the Pistons would have to make a decision on what to offer him from an extension standpoint, whether they want to sign him to a max, which this pen keeps blowing up on me. Anyway, Jaden Ivey, this is his contract window. This is probably his big offseason where the Pistons might want to get ahead of free agency and sign him to a big deal now, or let him play it out next year and decide what to do from there. So really unfortunate for him. Our thoughts go out to him. I always said that Purdue was never going to get the best of Jaden Ivey. The NBA was. And you were starting to see the light come on a little bit. He's having a pretty good year, a really good year. He's improved in a bunch of different ways. Again, the Pistons aren't the best team in the NBA by a long shot, but he's become more efficient. He's shooting threes really well, and now his season's presumably over. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know if they have made that official or not, but again, a really, really unfortunate deal for him. And so that's what I got. Just two things I want to say there at the end: the New Orleans part and the thing about Jaden Ivey. So from Purdue's 81-61 win at Minnesota, improving its record to 2-1 in the league early on. This is Brian Neubert from GoldenBlack.com. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel, as always, for your support. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, no matter how frozen those materials might be. So, thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you Sunday after Purdue plays Northwestern in Mackey Arena. Big game.